To go, I'll prompt you like I did yesterday. So I'll just ask you the question.
Okay.
What was a moment that made you say, "Wow, God"?
Yes, Michael. Well, I think we all have more than one of those moments in your life, especially when you've been on this planet for a while, like I have. But there was one, and it actually when I finally realized that I had to make every day count. And that might seem strange for some people, and especially when you're listening, I say, "Well, maybe you already realize that you need to make every day count." But when I really discovered that I needed to make every day count, and if when I talk about this, it's actually it was a fairly emotional situation that I found myself in, because we all have good moments, we've got bad moments, and we've got moments we would rather forget, and other ones that just get us through life, just as a matter of living. But the same happens with phone calls as well, and this is really about where it happened. The phone call, I call it, actually, because we sometimes get phone calls, and especially in this modern age, we can actually look at the phone and see who it is and decide whether we will answer or not. But in the year 2000, that wasn't quite so good yet. So I'd been working away from home, and then I came home. I was working in Brazil, and I came home, and also very much involved in Ki Aikido, martial arts. And a few days later, I was going to help somebody who'd been with me for 15 years. I had him as a junior at 7 years old, and he was 22 now. And I was going to train him to get him ready for his black belt, which would have been wonderful. And as I said, I'd been a sensei for quite a while, and there's quite a few people around us who we became very friendly with over the years that have been in martial arts, and I'm still practicing. And on this given day, the phone went, and of course, as you do, you pick it up. And it was one of our friends from the martial arts as well, and a good friend. He answered the phone and said who it was, and then the phone went silent. And I thought, okay. And then he maybe plucked up the courage to ask me, but he said, "Have you heard?" Now, I don't know if any listeners have ever had a phone call like that or a conversation like that, but you already get a feeling, and the hair starts to stand on end, because you know that there is something that is not right, because it was not a happy tone that came out either. So you can tell it by you've got this feeling that something's happened. So he says, "Have you heard?" And I didn't answer directly, because I thought, what is he talking about? And I'd heard some things that had happened. An accident had happened in our area, and we live in a small town, 6,000 people only. And outside the town, an accident had happened the night before, but I didn't hear any details. But then all of a sudden, when he said that, something struck me. And so I said, "No, but I take it it's not good news." He says, "Man," he says, "David died last night." And this is the young man I was talking about. He was 22 years old, and everything to live for, and he was like a little brother to me. Now, I still get feelings and emotions that are difficult to explain, and I'm sure people who've had bad news before, they'll know what it feels like. But this is 24 years ago, and even now, and I never wanted to get rid of these feelings, and I'm going to talk about this, because this has something to do with make every day count. See, what happened then is, I mean, it's a much longer story, but basically, my best friend was his uncle, and he had no children himself, so he was like a son to him. And as I said, he was like a little brother to me. And to find out that he'd actually, on his motorbike on his way to his girlfriend on a country lane, he'd collided with a cow that had broken out, and it was already kind of getting dark. And he'd collided, and normally he came off his motorbike, and the brain stopped with a sudden stop. And normally, if anybody who falls then down on the road again, the shock of that should start the brain again. But this is a 1 in a billion chance, and his brain never started again. And that's how he passed away. And as I said, at any age is bad, but at 22, this young man was a gentleman, and I loved him like a little brother as well. And to get that news, at that moment, I mean, it put me on my knees. Les Brown always says that, if you fall down, fall on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. But there was no falling on my back here. I still had the phone in my hand, and I fell on my knees, and I couldn't believe it. And so we had a conversation about, what happened and things, and that we then we needed to go and support our best friend who was the uncle, and he kind of lost his son. And I thought, the way I feel, how am I going to help somebody else? But luckily, in one way, I had been doing martial arts for 20 years, which was more mind over matter, and I've been heavily involved in my personal development for 20 years as well. And those kind of things saved me, because I hate to think what would have happened, how I would have coped if that hadn't happened. So, I had to pluck up my courage then, and I left it for a little while, because it was so surreal. I thought, he can't be dead. So I really sat there for a while and thinking, and I thought, yes, I need to take some action here. So I first of all, I called my friend, and he asked a silly question, how are you, and sorry, and all this kind of stuff, condolences and whatever, but how are you, and of course this time really meaning it, because I had no idea how he would feel if I felt the way I did, and we had a short conversation, and then the day after that I went to visit him. Because he had, of course, family was around and all that kind of stuff, and I went to visit, and then we also went to look at young David, which was strange, because apart from a little blip on his nose that he hit a helmet, there was nothing at all wrong with him. And I try to help out, put my hand on the shoulders and just talk to people, because there were so many of us in a very small community. We're so involved with this through the martial arts and every other kind of place. And, I had sleepless nights. I didn't know how I was going to cope, but I knew I had to, especially for the sake of all the other people and those that are even more affected than I was. So I really, apart from the quiet nights I had in the next week and a half or so, I really didn't have a lot of time to grieve myself. But one thing I knew is, at some point I had to go back to work again, and they even called me back early. I suppose I had 4 weeks at home, and after 2 weeks I needed to go back. So so of course the funeral came, and that was another heart-wrenching time. And it's like that for anybody and everybody at funerals. But when you're listening to this, when something bad happens to you, you really need to dig deep inside your very core and your very existence and find, is there anything that keeps me going, and I did, because then I started thinking at that time as well, even though I was still trying to cope with this whole terrible situation. I started to think, I really nearly felt guilty, because I even, that wasn't the wow God moment. Yes, it was an oh God moment at that point, because I said, and I started even questioning my belief, because I said, God, I said, this young boy is 22. He was 15 years younger than me. I says, why not me? Why him? He had everything to live for. And I says, I wish I had been me. Because I at least had lived, I thought a good life at least, but and I thought, God, why could you let this happen? And so I had those questions, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who's got these kind of questions. If you're listening to this and you've had some terrible things happen, and that even though you're a believer, you have those kind of things, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What is wrong is if you completely put it out of your life and never go back to your belief that is the basis of your life, really, your foundation, the values you've got, and the values you got from your family and your friends and your grandparents, as I have had. So I thought about it for a while, and then I started to think, apart from the fact that I had to leave again, so my grieving was a very different situation. I did, when I went back to work in the oil industry, and I certainly for a good while, I did drink far more than was good for me, and that was my way of coping, and it was not the best way, but I mean, I had nobody around me. I could tell it to some people, and they are not invested and involved. Yes, they felt sorry for me, but I couldn't share this with anybody, and it was not like we have now the internet and things like that. But anyway, as time goes by, and they say time is a great healer, and it is, but we will never forget. I mean, in March, it was 24 years ago, and I remember the day, the 22nd of March, and he was 22 in 2000. So, but I then started to realize that, for my life for his life to have mattered something, I felt as he felt like a little brother to me, I needed to be somebody who made something of their life, be the change you want to see in the world, and all this. And I was already busy with my personal development, but it now had much more of a purpose, because I thought I owe it to myself, and I owe it to young David, that I make something of my life and I make every day count. And that's when the wow God thing happened. I said, this is why we sometimes, as you the listener might have experienced as well, you have to go through bad things. The good things are wonderful, but you have to go through bad things. So you need maybe the experience to grow into the person you need to become for the journey and the purpose and the destiny that you've been destined for. And it started making sense for me. And I say, wow, God, I talked a lot in the privacy of my hotel rooms, and I said, wow, God, I don't fully understand it, but I'm getting a better picture of that. My life needs to be based on these experiences. That I felt the pain and I felt the suffering in a second degree, if you like, but I felt it so much, and it hurt so much that I had to go through that fire to make sure that I came out the other side a better person, if you like. And I don't say I was a bad person before that, but I started putting the pieces together that I knew there was more for me to be done in this world. And I hope that makes some sense to people. When you go through difficult situations, I'm not talking to you, the listener, now, because everyone matters. And whether it's a divorce, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's bullying, and the situations around the world just now that people are dying around you that you really care about. It is serious, and it is destructive, and it destroys you on the inside a little bit. A little piece of you might die, but a big piece of you still lives. And that's why I want to say to you, I always say that, live every day as if it was your last day, and one day you'll be right. And that really comes together with the fact that we need to make sure, we need to live an intentional life. That is much more than just having good intentions, because people with good intentions might do something good occasionally. But people who live an intentional life do something good continually. So build yourself up every day, because if, like me, I did this for 20 years, and that's the one thing I put down again. It was God put a book in my hand at 17 where I started that journey. But even then, I'm glad that I had that development to deal with that pain, and I'm sure that makes sense to a lot of you if you listen to this. But I really hope that you also, make, as the coach John Wooden said, make every day your masterpiece. And from me, Jan Roberts, in South Africa, to you, I do hope that you make every day count. Thank you.